So thanks for taking some time today.
Cool.
So we want to talk a bit about the Japanese angle on SSCs, but let's start with kind of what is shared service centers. For those of you who have not done this yet or familiar with it yet, but Romek's got a short presentation about the sector, and I'll ask you to please show that if you would.
Yeah, let me use. I'm a consultant, everyone, so unfortunately that means I have to use slides. Otherwise, I get uncomfortable.
Great.
So, I've got 5, 6 areas I want to talk through. So first, I think it's really important just to say what our business services. Just very quickly explain what is it. Then I've asked a number of friends of mine who work in the industry who are either work in a Japanese company or have worked with a Japanese company and got a bit of insight into what is the same, so what's common in Japan-CEE, and then exactly the same, what's different. Then what I'd like to do is go through the future, the industry itself, where's it going, and then relate that back to potential Japanese investors. What does that mean for you? Then a quick wrap up and open for questions and answers as always. Okay, so I'm going to move as quickly as I like. Tom, please jump in whenever you're ready and you want to add something of interest or whatever. Okay. So let's start with what is business services or what are they? I cheated here. I literally cut and pasted what Tom wrote down. Okay. That was a really good one, and I can blame him if you disagree. So, you know, when we're talking what are business services, it's how central European locations, cities, countries, centres can physically help Japanese corporates that are in Europe. And I think that's a really important thing in Europe. How we can optimise their business processes. How can we get better with the back office? It really is as simple as that. And what I mean by what commonly we find is a global company will have a footprint. In Europe, they may have 10 countries, 20 countries, 10 cities, 20 cities, etc., all in different countries. And to be frank, often in Western Europe, and therefore considerably more expensive, more expensive than Central and Eastern Europe. So what a business services is that ability to move those people, the workload from expensive places across many locations and group them together in one and put that in a cheaper place. So that's the idea. And the logic here is why would you do it? I mentioned one is cost, very clear. Next one, quality. Why quality? I think it's really important when you think about accounting, IT, procurement, HR, and lots of other things, is if you're doing it in 20 different countries, I can guarantee you're doing it 20 different ways. So the idea here is by grouping it together, you've got that ability to make it more common and therefore define quality. So you define it in one place, not 20, and you're more likely to achieve it. And then there's the strategic agility piece. This is really, I think, something that people forget. And I love this example. Many of my clients over the 25 years have implemented an Oracle or an SAP or any other common backbone system for the company. The reality is, if you don't centralize the back office, you're going to roll out that system in 20 different countries, 20 different processes, 20 different groups of people, on and on 20 times. It's actually 20 projects. They're strategically and speed to action and markets. If you're doing it in one place, your ability to do it once and really get it right once, you can do it much more slowly, be much better at it, because you're not rushing to do the next location. So there's this element of strategically being smart here by grouping everyone together. Okay. So Japan-CEE, what is the same? Lots of people say to me, yeah, they're nothing alike. And then when I dig down one question, I just said, give me one thing, and then suddenly there was 20. The most common one I found, which I found really interesting, was most people, I asked maybe 10. The most common first point they made was Japan-CEE, they're nothing like the US. I don't know, when I said what's common, the first thing they told me is what's not common, so what's not alike. And I deep dived on this, and I actually think I see a massive similarity here. Is you look at the US or North American market, it's enormous, but it is very common, meaning common language, common everything. Yeah, it's one country plus Canada, right? That's the same size of the Asian market, same size as if you exclude China, and the same as the European market. So then if you look at that, you then go Asia and Europe, what's similar, what's the same? Well, Asia and Europe is 30 countries, 30 languages, 30 cultures, all very different. And that means you have to do it really differently. It's not cut, paste. It is different. So when you move French work and German work, they're different, which I imagine is exactly the same as if I said I'm moving work from Japan and I'm moving work from Indonesia. There's more uncommon than common. So that was the main point. So it wasn't really that we're not like the US. What's the same is that Asia and Europe are very similar. This is something I heard again and again. Japanese kind of work ethic is get it done. Really get it done. And I have to say, I live in Poland. I'm Polish background, and there's a great thing I've always seen and I love about, and to be honest, the whole of the CEE, the natural approach to workload is pride in getting it done. So you do not get at 5 o'clock when I'm running out the door. You do a bit, but if there's a bit of work to do for another 20 minutes, they would do the extra 20 minutes and get it done. So there's a get it done attitude, and I've heard that very similar to Japan. Hard working. Again, you look at Western Europe and Eastern Europe, you look at lots of statistics around how many hours they really work. The actual volumetrics of work, CEE is much higher than mainland England, much higher. So we are more hardworking and effective. That's a fact. Then I asked, is Japan like that? I was given an anecdotal story by a Japanese gentleman who told me no one would take offense at this. But he says one of the conundrums in Japan and Japanese companies is that the staff, the workforce, look at the boss, the team leader, the manager, and they won't leave until the manager's gone home. The manager won't go home until the team have gone home. And so everyone's in the office for 24 hours. I mean, it's brilliant because I'm only paying for 8. So I like the idea, but I also I'm a big believer in work-life balance, and that doesn't sound like a work-life balance. So hard-working, let's not go too far ever, but I love that. Hard-working meaning let's get it done again, get it done attitude. Very true, very common between them. Okay, this was super interesting for me to hear. Was a lot of Japanese companies in Europe, and I'm only going to speak for Europe because that was the group I spoke to, is a lot of discussion now around reducing office costs. And I mean office, not the office, the building. I meant the back office, HR, IT, that whole admin, not the sales, more of the non-sales, the non-selling element of the business.
And why do you think that's the case now?
I'm not sure if it's a COVID thing.
Okay.
I don't know that. But I tell you something, and Tom and I spoke about this yesterday, and we both smiled, is if there's like a natural progression. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can literally see country by country, region by region, see how they've taken on the idea of shared services. So I go back 25 years, UK, France, Germany, it was there. I go back 15 years, you're seeing Scandinavia. You go back now 5 years, you're seeing much more Switzerland. Where Switzerland, I can't remember a client particularly 10 years ago, I can't really remember. Now, most of my clients are Swiss. Why? Because they didn't do it before. And that's my view, is I've got a feeling that the Japanese multinationals that spread across Europe, I mean, they're following the same path, it's just a well-worn path, and it doesn't matter as long as you're on the path. Yeah. And COVID. I said, I don't think that's the reason why Japanese companies are looking at this. I don't. But what I will tell you is COVID has proven one fact in our industry: shared services, offshoring, nearshoring, outsourcing, all of them proven COVID. You can do work from anywhere. As before, what we would find is in a department, 2 or 3 people, no, we have to be in New York, no, we have to be in London, we have to be in Paris. Always. Well, they weren't in Paris, they were home. They weren't in New York, they were home. And we hear all these stories, people live in New York, but have been now working in Mexico. Yeah, which I can fully understand, and so would I if I could. So what's happened is, and it's a great thing for the industry, we've now proven that you don't need to be in these hotspots, meaning high cost locations. You can basically do 90% of the workload anywhere in the world. And what does that mean? It means a lot of the back office stuff should be done in the back office, in a central location. And we've got some really great examples here that I collected them. Tom helped me do this as well. So we've got, Gdańsk seems to be the super hotspot, Sony, Fuji, Ricoh. I worked on the Ricoh project. That's about 5 years ago. What I found super interesting, Tom asked me, so how did you find working with the Japanese team? And I sat back and I thought, okay, I only met a Japanese gentleman once, and that was when we opened the office. The rest of the team were all European. Now, I don't know what that means. It doesn't mean anything. But the reality was the culture of the business of Ricoh was very, very Japanese, and there was a very much a view of that approach to life, and etc., and the way of working. But the people saying that were Europeans, and so there was a little bit of a balance between the two. So it wasn't just Japanese, it wasn't just Europeans, somewhere in the middle.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But we've got, as I said, Bridgestone, Olympus, Hitachi, Fujitsu, Sony. What a great brand name! Some fantastic brands.
And that's of course just Poland. We have also Nissan in Hungary. We have NTT Data in Romania. You have a lot more.
Japan,
JCI just opening up in Warsaw. Exactly. Is this the last slide?
No. Okay.
Well, you don't know. No, we'll put us both on screen in a second.
Okay, we're coming.
Yeah. Well, we won't see us anyway.
Okay, well.
Oh, right. Okay. Forgot about that. All right. Good. Exactly. Okay. There we go. We're feeling left. Exactly.
So I just went through and now let me tell you what's not. And jump in, please, Tom, and give up. This industry as well as I do. So, okay. The culture. And culture is such a broad. I'm not talking about what we eat and things like that. I'm actually saying more of the business culture. Again, strangely enough, more Swiss than European is this view that you need consensus. We drive forward with decisions in Japanese organizations with a common agreement. So you would very rarely hear the leader, the boss, say we are doing X. It's much more like the idea, what about X? And then it's a lot of discussion around X, the pros and cons, etc. But it's to get that consensus so there's a general agreement to move forward rather than the driving force of moving forward. And that's about being more thoughtful. And to be honest, the negative side of that is it takes longer. Okay, and that would explain to me as well, if you think, like I explained to you, Swiss companies, lots of Swiss companies are very much consensus driven. It's in their culture. They really have only kicked off in the last 5 years, and Japan, I think, is more forward now. Yeah. I think there's actually obviously huge potential for Japanese companies that have their back office in Western Europe. So many have not yet made the journey to consider moving. You look at that, you posted those logos on the map. I find that interesting by how many you're missing. Because you put that logo of the Western European, Japanese-based Western European, that'd be a huge number in Western Europe. But a small fraction of those have back offices in Central East Europe, and I think that's a huge growth area for the Central European region. So I'll give you a great statistic. If you look at Fortune 500 or global 500 largest companies in the world, 95% are in GPS in it. And some of them have been in it for 20 years. So generally, offshoring centers of excellence, whatever we want to call it, is extremely common globally. I'd say the Japanese companies are not even 50%. So there's that element. But I thought about this, and someone gave me some, not ideas, but more thinking. Is rushing in is not always the smartest thing to do. So being the first is actually not the right way to do this. You can ask yourself, is this a good way as well? So let everyone run in, make all the mistakes, learn some of the mistakes, and then we come in behind them and go very smoothly. Now that sounds a bit like a consultant trying to put a positive spin on something, and actually it's not. I have a lovely example of the Polish banking sector. Sorry, I'm being recorded. Apologies for that. Polish banking sector, where literally I've been in Poland living here since 1989. So in the early 90s, I went into a bank and I felt like going back to the 60s. I mean, it was so old-fashioned. Everything was manual, passports. It was just unbelievable. Because we were so far behind, between the early 90s and late 90s, we actually jumped probably ahead. And Poland has been viewed as one of the world's leading banking environments. What happens in Poland is nearly always first in the world here. So the number of checks is zero. We never had checks. We went straight to electronic transfers. The percentage of people who have electronic accounts and not physical accounts is extremely high. So there is a benefit here. Maybe it's not about being last, but going slowly. But now knowing what the market is and how to do it is a very good thing. So it's not a negative that we're slower than everyone else. Let's put
closer to spin and say that they've made all the mistakes and we're going to follow. Another Japan-CEE difference, I think, is Japanese companies, the feedback from the guys I got is very much a tech focus. It's not about lots of people working. It's the tool, use the tool. I don't think that is always the most common view in the marketplace. And I think this one is the one I experienced this in Hong Kong, and I think anyone in the Japanese market knows the businesses there will understand it is extremely difficult for a Japanese company to make people redundant. And that, I think, is probably the biggest challenge for this industry, for Japanese companies, that centralization. If you're moving work from Germany and France, the honest reality is a majority of the people in Germany and France will be going. So that there's no way around that. There's no.
And that may be the reason that they've been slower to move into Central Europe.
I agree. I think
eventually the numbers will be compelling. You see more and more coming.
You have to wonder whether it's not one of those where, unfortunately, to maintain competitiveness, halving your back office costs. Everyone else is doing, and when I say everyone, 95% of organisations are doing it or have done it, and you're not doing it. 50% of your back office costs that you've got to look at. Can you actually not do it? And that would be my last point. GBS is not normal in the Japanese environment.
Right.
So let me give you a bit of predictions. Obviously, it's based on some of it I already know, so I'm not predicting. I'm just telling you what is clearly already happening. But this is number one for me. GBS, centralisation, offshoring for Europe is a top agenda item right now. If I go back 2 years pre-COVID, it would be top 5. Now it's top 3, and probably 40-50% of the time it's actually number 1. So the view of organisations realising that where you do the work is now much less important. It's about the quality of the people, it's not the cost of the people, it's about that strategic outlook. So it's virtually number 1 or 2 on everyone's agenda.
And even companies who've done it, so
you look at Shell and BP and Pepsi-Cola, they all have centres. They're all growing. They're not shrinking, they're growing. So they're more working, not more of the same but new. And so that goes to my next point. It's not finance and IT and HR only, it's much wider. So what do I mean by that? Legal departments.
I was going to say, big examples of DLA Piper and Denton's and others, integrators who are doing a lot of the legal work for Western Europe and Central Europe.
Yep. And can you move 30% of the workforce and half that cost and move it here? That's the way you've got to look at it. It's not about moving the whole department. It's can you move big pieces of it? That's the best way to review that. The other part of that. The next wave is, I'm saying it's not finance and IT, but it is finance and IT, and it's more finance and IT. But where I see significant growth and a view that when I look at it from now to the next 2-3 years are really areas of work which don't exist. So analytics, digital, they exist, but they're one person in the New York office, they're 2 people in the Paris office. They're one person in one department in London and another person in another department in London. The reality is they're growing like mushrooms, but very small mushrooms, and in a lot of places.
And then there are also niches like medical services. You see Capita doing that sometimes. Having a funny example, the guy they have doctors and nurses in Krakow who are reviewing the X-rays of dogs with insurance claims.
This is for vets.
To see if they've actually fraudulent claim of that. Why would you do that work in London? The same. We do it in Krakow. The other thing that I've seen coming up is actuarial work. Actuaries, hugely expensive, very high value added people. And doing that in Western Europe or US, very, very expensive, but great mathematics in Central Europe, lots of actuaries as well, who are vastly different pay scale than you would have in Western Europe or US.
It's not just the common stuff, it's the, let's say we don't even that, and then more importantly, it's the new stuff. Okay. 3 minutes. So next one, automation is the tool, not the objective. Unfortunately, in the industry right now, everyone thinks that automation, robotics, AI is ultimately where we're going. It is not. It is not. It's part of our toolkit when we run our GBS, our shared services, and our outsourcing. You cannot jump from
20
countries to go straight to automation. No one's done it because you can't do it. It's impossible. The reality is you can move from 20 countries to one location and then automate 10, 15, 20% of that workload. And I think that's really, really important. But net is growth, meaning even if we automate 20%, my prediction going forward is we're going to get more work than what we lose for robotics and automation, etc. And then the one that I think is super important for the people on the call is CEE will continue to be the location for Europe. There is no doubt, absolutely no doubt. I see no change forthcoming. Lots of people are saying, what about Spain and Portugal? This is a meaning they're cheap right now. There's a lot of unemployment. Unfortunately, when the world goes back to normal, they will go back to normal and they won't be as cheap as what they should be. But more importantly, some fantastic new locations. So, Moldova, it's extremely cheap. They're extremely keen. If you can get in there, you have to be quite bold, meaning war, Moldova. You can actually set up a fantastic center. Or maybe what you do, you go safe cut wolf and maybe cheap Moldova both. So what does it mean if you're a Japanese investor? You need to be thinking GBS. You need to. If you're a CEE, not India, because of languages, it doesn't work. Better cultural match as well, absolutely certain of that. And then, of course, I haven't said much about it, but BPO says it's not all about doing it, so outsourcers are out there. So my big point to everyone is it's not if you're going to do this, it's when you're going to do it. Because if you're not doing this and not thinking about it, then you really will be left behind. So you've got to put this on the agenda. Put it on 5, eventually you'll get to 4 and 3 and 2 on the agenda. But it's not number 75, guys. I promise you it is not. So, open to questions.
Great. I'm not going to take questions. We're going to wrap up at this moment because we got the other main stage. So thanks, Romek, for your blistering fast insight. And we got this recorded, and for those of you who can join it later, that's great. So we'll wrap up a lot. Looking forward to seeing more Japanese investors in Central East Europe with the SSC side. Thanks again.
No worries.
And welcome to Poland if you come out. We're happy to help you. Give me a chat. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay.
Let's toss the report. Yeah. No one joined.
I don't think no one joined. Yeah. So we recorded.